This is Talking to the Dead with Janet Kubik, and I'm your host, Joe Oliva. Let me introduce you to the star of the show, your friend and mine, Janet Kubik.
Today I get a round of applause.
You've had a round of applause 3 episodes in a row.
Are you kidding me?
All of the episodes. You're not paying attention.
I'm too distracted to pay attention.
Yeah.
But it's lovely. Thank you so much. It's very heartwarming. So thanks.
You're welcome. For the note, I've had no rounds of applause for me.
Oh,
not saying anything. Yay! Not saying anything.
Oops. Okay.
That's okay. I don't need applause. I'm not a fan of it. So anyway,
okay.
This is episode 3.
Yes.
It's exciting because we did episode 1 and episode 2, and each time your guides have interjected.
Yes. Which sort of surprised me, but it's very cool that they have shown up.
Yeah, we initially said we're always going to have a show prepared so that they don't have to show up, but 2 out of 2 times, 100% of the time, they've shown up. So we thought, let's do a show on spirit guides, and then watch. They're not going to show up today.
I know. Right? That's honestly, being a medium, that is something that you're always like a little bit nervous about. It's like, are they actually going to show up? Or am I just going to be sitting here, kind of on my own? But honestly, thinking back to all of my experiences with spirit, I think they have shown up every time. Like anytime I've done a scheduled one-on-one, or I've done spoken to a group of people.
I've asked you that because you said I've asked you before, what are your fears, right? And you said that was one of them, was that just no one will show up. And I said, have you ever not had anyone show up? And you said no.
No. I think they're so excited and anxious to be able to connect with us here,
right,
that if they're given the opportunity, then they're going to take it.
Okay, so today's topic, spirit guides. I want to know the who, what, where, when, how, different types. I'll just throw a bunch of questions at you, and you can start wherever you want.
Okay.
Does everyone have them? Does everyone have spirit guides? Are there a team? I have a spirit guide? You've told me his name. Does he serve other people or just me? How does it work? Where do you want to start?
Well, so the first thing before we actually start is, as you were sort of explaining where we were going to go with this, the first thing that kind of came forward for me was that the most important thing to know or to take away, like it's cute, they're showing you like a takeout box from a restaurant.
So you're already in mediumship mode.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're already getting info from the other side. So they're showing me this takeout box, and they're referring to it as a takeaway. And the most important takeaway for them from today is to know that they are there for us. Is how they are there for us. So logistics aside, and sort of all of the rigmarole aside, or the definitions or the defining, all of those things kind of set aside, the most important thing to know is that spirit are there for us. And they keep saying it exactly like that, for us.
They are there for us. Repeat it with us at home. They are there,
they are there
for us. They're stressing the for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
For, like, there's a real emphasis on the for. Like it feels like a real emphasis on the idea of support. The real emphasis on the idea of that they're there, like they've got our backs. They're there for us to rely on, to utilize. So I think that's the sense that they're giving me, and why they're emphasizing that for us. And that actually, in fact, they show it to me now like in capitals. So if the sentence is written out sort of in my mind's eye, the 4 is all in capital letters. So a very significant emphasis on that.
Okay, so why don't you tell me about your spirit guide? I'm using the singular for now because I know that you have a main one, and you said most people have a main one, and I think you should be the first one to mention her name. It's a her.
Okay. It is a her. It is a female energy. Yes, and her name is Myrtle.
Right.
Which is kind of maybe an old-fashioned name, or a name that we certainly don't hear often, today.
I've quizzed Myrtle as a long time ago when we first started doing this, and she's been incarnated on Earth several times, but her last incarnation was in Greece. Do you remember that?
Honestly, I don't remember that.
It was in
But
Greece,
that's awesome.
so sometimes in my mind I call her Myrtle the Greek.
Awesome. That's super cool.
Myrtle's not a Greek name. It's just bizarre that that's how it worked out. But anyway, it is an old-fashioned name.
Yes.
So so everyone has a main guide and then a bunch of different guides that perform different roles. And you've mentioned in the past that sometimes they will sort of make themselves more present if that role is needed, and then they will kind of back away and sort of fade into the background when they're not needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So from my experience thus far and my understanding, we do have multiple guides that support us. So those are energies or spirit from the other side, or like we've said before, however you feel comfortable terming that, heaven or the spirit realm, or whatever resonates with you. But for me, I'll just use the other side for now. So there are multiple energies and spirit there that are sort of directly supporting us in this experience. So we also are spirit ourselves, right? We tend to think of ourselves as human first, but really from what I've come to understand, we are spirit that is sort of incarnate in physical form, that is here in this experience of living as humans in this world, etc. So sorry, I'm trying to focus.
Is it Myrtle the Greek?
She laughs and she knows. She says, although sometimes, my friend, she's speaking to you, we do not always agree, or she feels like she can cause you frustration sometimes. But she says ultimately she appreciates, or she recognizes, the term of endearment. So when you call her Myrtle the Greek, she's recognizing that as a term of endearment. She says that you and she have a funny relationship.
Yes.
Which I would definitely agree.
I've tried to debate her, and I'm a pretty good debater, I think, but I always lost to her, and that's the frustrating part.
Yes. Yes, she says it can be challenging for you as kind of like the collective, like humans, people here, to understand their ways, because there's been so much misconception about the role of spirit that has been brought forward in our experience here in humanity, or as humans. So sometimes we have certain expectations as to what exactly the role of spirit, or for example, a spirit guide would be. And she says often that equates with definitions, defining, with answers. And she says, you both, speaking to you and I at this point, and to everybody, but you and I have come to understand that their role is a supportive role. It's a supporting role. It is not a role dedicated to dictation, or to judgment, or to really unfolding answers for you. Like she shows me the image of rolling out a red carpet. Like, here you go. Here's the answers. You just have to walk along the red carpet. She says it's more of a supporting role, a guiding role. Guiding role. Yeah. So the word guide. They're not so much leaders, she says, as they are supporters. followers of our journeys here. And sort of like, I get the sense of like a cavalry, like I see horses coming forward, like a kind of coming in, and people on horses, and they're there not to lead the charge, but to support the cause. And the cause, being our own individual well-being, as well as the well-being of the existence itself. And she says, yes, I will pause now, Joe. So I don't know if you were wanting to interject or not or something. 'Cause she was like,
Myrtle was earthbound at one point in time. Is that correct?
Yes, and she is giving me this, which it means for me, I've come to understand this gesture as like many moons ago, so many years ago, quite some time ago, in the time frame of the existence of humanity. She says.
And will she ever be earthbound again, or once your spirit guide, that's it?
Even before you finished answering that question, she was adamantly shaking her head that no, she will not incarnate again into this existence. Her role now is to serve from the other side, she says.
She's retired from being human.
Simply shifted gears, she says. Switched gears.
Can she place a number on the number of times she incarnated?
There's some connection to a 3. It almost comes across as 3,000, and then my Janet brain goes, what? And so I kind of I don't know if I'm stopping sharing that, because to me that sounds like ridiculous, or if I'm not hearing her correctly, but there is some reference to 3, and it's definitely more than 3, so it's either like 300, 3,000. I get this sense that it's many times, which is why she's very comfortable now in her role, because she's sort of, it's cute. I get like, I've been there, done that.
Right.
And she says that, walking in the human experience is a challenging role for a spirit. It's a challenging mission, so to speak, to take on for an energy or a spirit being. So she's just content to be where she is at this time and supporting the human existence in her current role.
So you have more than one guide, but she seems to be the lead guide. Myrtle does. Hold on, something just fell down over there. Anyway.
That's funny because, so you just said that, we just paused for that second because you said something fell behind you. And it's funny because to me, what comes forward is that is your guides also making you aware of their presence. Because it's important to know that even though I'm able to directly or very closely connect to my guides, that we all have them, which is, I think, a point you brought up earlier. We do all, each individually, have our own team of spirit guides. Right. So this is sort of your guides shifting the energy literally in the room to give you an indication or make you aware of their presence, and that they are standing behind you and that they are standing with you for this conversation, because we're speaking on behalf of all guides at this point, as much as right. We're talking with Myrtle and honing in sort of on some of the guides that I have had the experience of working with or relating to. All guides, we're sort of speaking on behalf of them at this time.
I keep losing my train of thought today. I don't know why.
You know why? Do you know why, I bet, Joe?
Why?
Because of the amped up energy. When the spirit guides come forward, you've seen this with me about 1,000 million times, you start to react to the shift in the energy. And so likely what is happening for you is you are feeling that energy, you're connecting to that energy, and you're aware of it. So it does make it hard to kind of hone in because you're becoming more sensitive to that energy. And typically, they're saying for you and others, there's not as many guides forward. There's sort of a few guides at a time, but because we're addressing guides, there's lots of them present. So that's probably why you're more attuned or tuning in more to that frequency, that shift in frequency, which is causing your scatteredness, she says, or the scattered thinking or the distraction, because you're feeling that intensity in the energy of multiple spirit around you, multiple guides stepping forth.
Okay, so this may seem academic, but did Janet and Myrtle reconnected somehow in the past? Like, was there a past life where you were mother-daughter, siblings, or anything like that?
That's a really cool question, and to be honest, I have never asked that of her. So I'm curious to see what the answer is to this too. Immediately before I even sort of go to her directly, I am getting the sense of no. She says that in that case, this current relationship would almost have been a little too convoluted. If we had had a pre-existing relationship or a previous relationship or encounter, it would have brought forth energies with it. Almost like we, talk about in relationships here that we carry baggage from relationships. It feels like that would have been the situation as well. So we were introduced to each other in this incarnation, in my incarnation as Janet, and in her role as spirit guide.
But spirit guides you can have had a past relationship with them.
So again, that's not something I've ever really actually thought too much on or connected too much on. So I'm going to see how Myrtle brings that forward. She's sort of referencing the idea, I hear guardian angels.
That's a different type of guide, right? From what we've talked about, I think they've never been incarnated, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's my understanding, that what is referred to, or what are referred to as angels, are entities or energies that have not incarnated into the human existence. But I think what the sense that I'm getting is that there are sort of differing roles on the other side. And that I keep hearing what I often refer to as supporting spirit. So it feels to me like what's coming forward is that those who we have connected with previously in the human existence, whether that be from this lifetime, where we recognize them, we know them as humans or as people in our lives, or those who we have connected with here in the human experience previously in other lifetimes, although potentially not exactly in this lifetime.
Right.
It feels as though those are being referred to as supporting spirits. So they're like your spirit family, I'm getting. And they are there definitely to support, but not necessarily falling under the verbiage or the terminology or the definition of what would be a guide.
Okay.
Cool. I've never really spoken to her sort of specifically on that. So that's cool. But I often do that. I've used that term before on my own, that sense of sort of supporting spirit. So when I'm, reaching out for guidance, I'll ask for support from my guides as well as my supporting spirit. So I guess now that sort of makes a little bit more sense why I feel drawn to do that, because there is a bit of a differentiation, I guess.
So just some technical questions for Myrtle.
Okay.
These are gonna sound to some people ridiculous, but she is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, she is living in a place that is timeless, right? She doesn't experience time like we experience time.
Yeah, she says not in the way that you do. However, time is something that exists in all realms. It is an entity. It is a quantifier. Does that make sense? It is a
Yep.
quantifier, but it is very different from where she resides as opposed to where we currently reside. She says,
Right.
"Yeah,
And is she egoless?
okay." Now this is one of those times where Janet has to really concentrate a little bit more on separating myself, because when you ask a question like that, immediately I, as Janet, because that's who I am, I start thinking in regards to my own experience. But because we're asking Myrtle, I need to focus to try to separate my interpretations from what Myrtle has to say.
Okay.
She says ego is an element of energy, and she says it's very dominant in the lower vibration of the human existence. In order to create and sustain physical form, your own form as human beings, as well as the forms that surround you in things such as animals, plants, structures, there needs to be a density of energy. And she says that energy, or that density of energy, differs greatly from where she resides. Did that answer the question? I'm not even quite sure what I said there.
Sort of.
Okay.
So,
You want to ask again, and then I can try
well,
to get more.
okay. So I think
So
what she's
actually,
saying,
she's jumping in, Joe, again, and she says that density of energy is much more connected to the concept of time than you might equate, or that you might equate, or you might fathom. Yeah, there's this specific connection between the density of energy and the experience of time. Time is an experience as opposed to a thing. Did that answer your question more specifically? Or
it's
keep
actually
asking.
it's interesting that she connected those two things, the density of energy and time, because I mean, we used to have, in science world, we used to have space and we used to have time. And then they connected them and say now it's space time. And they think there's a connection between like how fast we experience time
Yes.
and the speed at which you're moving. And it's complicated. And it's like you need a PhD in physics to explain it, because I can't really explain it. I've
Yeah.
seen articles. But that is very interesting that I asked about time and then I asked about ego, and she's connecting the two.
Yes. Because ego is, again, very connected to energy. So often for myself, I'm sort of just stepping into myself again for a second to reference some of my experiences. When I refer to the ego, I also think of it as the lower vibrational energies, or you could use darker energies, or maybe the more negative energies. Those are the energies that I associate with ego. And those are also the lower vibrational energies. And as she's saying, those lower vibrational energies are more prevalent here, or prevalent or prominent here, because they're necessary in order to sustain physical matter. And she says that it's a very important connection to make, is that the ego is connected, or is a manifestation, she says, of the lower vibrational energies that are present in the experience. She says this is why there would be wise or best to invite a focus, or, sorry, one second. This actually almost feels like there's another guide stepping forward.
Okay.
This what's happening for me right now is that there is another one of the guides that I have connected with in past and pops in for me every now and again, and his name is Obiatron.
What?
Obiatron. I write what I hear.
You have never mentioned Obiatron.
Obiatron.
Wow.
I'm not sure if he is one that is a recognized one, because I mean, this is happening to me, but I'm not the only one. And so if you start to explore all of this stuff, through the internet or writings or connecting with other people, you start to see the connectivity of what I'm experiencing and what other people are experiencing. Now, I feel like I remember that Obiatron is someone who has come forward for others before. I believe actually he's come forward for my husband before. He is a male. Well, obviously I'm referring to him as a he. He is a male energy, and he has a fairly big presence. So again, this almost leads me to feel like he is a guide. I don't know if you want to say sort of like a higher up guide. I don't want to term it that way, but a guide who sort of maybe oversees more than just sort of an individual person. Again, with no judgment or of value on the roles, just a way to differentiate between the roles. But he has sort of a bigger, more authoritarian, but not in an aggressive way at all, or not in a dominating or dictatorial way. Very loving, but just a bigger presence. He's just got a fairly big presence. So I'm just sort of connecting in to see if he had something specific to say in coming forward right now.
Maybe we're just going to get like, when you go into a meeting room and you don't know all the participants, so everyone has to go and say their name and what, their job title. So maybe we're going to start doing that. So we've had Myrtle, who's your main guide. Now we have Obiatron. Well, let me ask this, Obiatron. What is your main role for Janet?
So he says it is for her as it is for many others. I keep getting the word supervisor. So it's almost as if he's just sort of that next level. Again, if we want to sort of talk to or refer to it in levels, but it's very important to them that we don't place any kind of value judgment, because that's an egoic structure. So the fact that with him having a higher up position, actually he's using the word broader position, it doesn't equate to any value. Like, he's not speaking against Myrtle or judging Myrtle or saying that she's any less valuable or important because she has a more specific role, whereby he has a broader role. Okay, so Myrtle has come through and spoken to other people before, but more so I think she's designated to me and supporting me in my journey, whereas he is sort of giving me the impression that he's funny, he's smiling, and he's like, I'm very wise. So he's been around. He's somebody who's been around. So the sense that I'm getting out too is if you want to equate it in terms of experience. So if Myrtle has a certain level of experience or has attained a certain level of experience in her soul's experience or her spirit experience, he's been around. He's someone that's been around longer, has gathered more experience.
Has he incarnated?
He just shakes his head. There is a bit of a shift happening again in the energy. He just keeps smiling at me. I don't know what that is. It's like a cheeky kind of smile. Like,
ask him what's so funny.
Yeah. He keeps sort of saying to me, like, I told you so. I told you so. Like, we always told you we would get here. We always told you we would get here to this place. And here we are. so for me, what that sort of feels like is that they have, since pretty much the very beginning of my connection or my conscious relationship with spirit, they have always said that I would be in a position of sharing.
Right.
And I've tried to do that in many, many ways. And because of my own personal soul experience, haven't really been ready to do that. So a lot of times we would try different, platforms and different ideas, and they would never really go anywhere beyond that experience themselves. Whereas I think he's sort of saying now that I personally am in a place where I'm ready to move forward with that role or responsibility of sort of introducing or reintroducing spirit to the masses, to everybody through my experience. He just sort of like gave me one of those like, yeah.
Well said kind of thing.
Yeah. And also with that now, Joe, I do feel as though they are starting to sort of step back. The energy of the room is starting to lessen or dissipate a little bit. So oftentimes that is their way of sort of saying they have brought forward what they intended to at this time. Often when I'm meeting with someone and receiving for them individually, they will literally say, that is all for now.
Right.
And then that's how I know that they've sort of brought forward what they wanted to at this time. Or maybe even what we can manage too. I think a lot of this stuff can be intense and can be overwhelming, and it takes time to process it. So I think sometimes they kind of know when we've reached our limit for that moment, and then they kind of step out. So.
Okay, well, this has been an interesting episode. We started talking about guides. You had Myrtle and Obiatron come forward, two of your guides. We've gotten some interesting insight. It's going to take me a little bit of time to digest, like in particular what Myrtle was saying about time and energy and ego and all the relationship between them. And Obiatron, who I've never heard before, just sitting and grinning. Okay, I can accept that. Any final thoughts before we end this episode?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, I mean, there's so much involved, just as there is in humanity, with humans, in relationships with humans, and amongst humans, and in our dynamics, and in structure and logistics and all of those things. There's so much to it. So, we go into a program with the intention of talking about guides, and we talk a little bit about the logistics, like what do you know is how this actually works, like do you have one, do you have two? So they sort of come forward with information on that, but then they also step in and share insight, and give us information, and let us actually connect to them. And sometimes the information, can be a little bit intense. It can be a little bit over my head, certainly, for sure. But it's fascinating how it all works. And that's really, for me, it's all about this process of sort of exploring spirit. And I think hopefully, my intention is that every episode will speak to somebody in their own unique way. And certain aspects of the episode might resonate a little bit more with someone than the rest, but those who are in need of the information will receive the information in whatever way it speaks to them. And sort of that's kind of the goal. I think that's the goal of spirit, and I think that's our goal in sharing that connection with spirit as well.
Okay, you are watching and or listening to Talking to the Dead with Janet Kubik. Thanks for joining us, and we encourage you to subscribe on whichever platform you're joining us on. Help spread the word by sharing, and be sure to visit janetkubik.com and sign up for her email list. Bye, Janet.
Bye. Thanks for checking in.
Bye, Myrtle. Bye, Obiatron.
Yeah.